Very good afternoon. It is 12 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. We're going to be in the House of Commons in the next minute or so for PMQs. As you can see, Sam Coates is with me in the studio. Sam, this is the last one, isn't it, before summer recess?
It certainly is. They tend to be a little bit more rambunctious, if I'm being honest. The Prime Ministers, leaders of the opposition, like to send their troops away for the holidays with a bit of cheer in their heart. But it's also the first one after we had that extraordinary story about the Afghanistan data leak yesterday. So a moment, I think, there for the House of Commons to chew over that. The Speaker has had some things to say this morning, I see, about the Afghan data leak. The first ever, as far as we're aware, use of a super injunction to stop the media talking about a sensitive issue of policy. So really a landmark moment in that super injunction across 2 years, preventing ministers, journalists, MPs, the Speaker, the opposition, Labour opposition, as it was back before the middle of last year, discussing this incredible tale of a data leak. You can see there on the right. You've got Keir Starmer waiting for Prime Minister's questions to begin.
I suppose, who needs to perform better today? Whose morale is lower? I mean, is there more pressure on the Prime Minister, more pressure on Kemi Badenoch?
Well, let's just listen to
yes,
Lindsay.
Here we go, I think.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's always been support across this House for the United Kingdom fulfilling our obligations to Afghans who served alongside British forces. We warned in opposition about Conservative management of this policy, and yesterday the Defence Secretary set out the full extent of the failings that we inherited. A major data breach, a super injunction, a secret route that has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Ministers who served under the party opposite have serious questions to answer about how this was ever allowed to happen. The chair of the Defence Committee has indicated that he intends to hold further inquiries. I welcome that and hope that those who were in office at the time will welcome that scrutiny. Mr. Speaker, President Macron's state visit last week saw us secure historic agreements, coordinating our nuclear deterrence, a major investment in Sizewell C, and a landmark returns deal, a crucial next step in restoring order to our immigration system. Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, I will host Chancellor Merz for further talks on our security and the economy. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Colin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Families in Burton and Uttoxeter are watching their smart meters like hawks and dreading that moment when their energy bill lands on the doorstep. So I welcome Labour's Warm Homes discount that is going to mean £150 off energy bills for millions of people across this country, providing meaningful support in these difficult times. Can the Prime Minister set out how this is going to help support families in my constituency and around the country?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for his question. I, of course, met his constituent, Nicola, in her kitchen, and she told me about how hard she's working to support her 3 children, but the past decade has let her down with false promises and public services array. Mr. Speaker, she told me about the difference the Warm Homes discount will make, £150 off energy bills, and she had a meter, if I recall, in her kitchen recording how much energy she was using. And it would make all the difference to her, is what she told me. And I promise Nicola, my honourable friend, there's much more to come.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the head of the OBR warned the government that higher and higher levels of taxes are bad for growth. Does the Prime Minister agree?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what's bad for growth. 14 years of a Tory government. That's what the stagnant growth for 14 years, leaving a £22 billion black hole. What we've achieved, Mr. Speaker, in the first quarter of this year is the highest growth in the G7, something we promised before the election. Investment of £120 billion into this country, which is a record in the first year of any government, and 3 trade deals, all of which will boost growth.
Mr. Speaker, he's talking about what he achieved. We just heard that inflation is up again, the worst in the G7. We left him with 2% inflation. We have a borrowing up unemployment up, taxes are up under his government. The fact is the Prime Minister doesn't get it, so let me tell him. His budget last year had high taxes. That's why the economy is contracting. But, Mr. Speaker, the government has said that they won't put up taxes for people on modest incomes. But they also seem incapable of explaining who is in that category. So can the Prime Minister clear up the confusion and tell us what he thinks a modest income is?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think of the working people across this country who put in every day and don't get back what they deserve, and that's who we're working for. That's who we're fixing the country. The sort of people that work hard but haven't necessarily got the savings to buy themselves out of problems. And, Mr. Speaker, that's who we're working for, and that's why we put the national living wage up. That's an extra £1,400. The national minimum wage up, that's £2,500 a year. The triple lock, Mr. Speaker, that went up pension up £470. And of course, we're extending childcare, opening free breakfast clubs and free school meals. We know exactly who we're working for. She comes here every week and just talks the country down.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not talking the country down, I'm talking him down. I asked him what a modest income was. He answered what a working person is. He doesn't know what a modest income is, and even on working people, they cannot define it. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury said that working people are people who don't get a payslip, but millions of self-employed people don't get a payslip. So are the self-employed next in line for a Labour tax rate?
The self-employed were the very people who suffered under their watch, repeatedly suffered under their watch, particularly, if I remember, during COVID, and when they didn't get the support that they needed. But she talks the country down, she cherry-picks. We have created, Mr. Speaker, since we've been in government, we've created 380,000 jobs, the employment rate is up, and inactivity is down, the complete opposite of what we inherited.
I don't know where these 3,000 jobs are coming from. Unemployment has gone up every month under his government. And perhaps he should speak to farmers and small business people and find out what those working people think about his government. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not all. We know the Chancellor is launching a review into pension contributions. It's as clear as day why this is. It is because the government is considering taxing them. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that a tax on pension contributions is a tax on working people?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we made absolutely clear manifesto commitments, which she asked me about last week and we're keeping to. I'm not going to write the budget months out from the budget. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud of the decisions that we took to invest in our NHS, to invest in our public services, all the decisions that they opposed. And it's no wonder that after a first year of a Labour government, business confidence is a 9-year high. That's longer than she's been in government. Mr. Speaker, 384, I'm not withdrawing, I'm going to repeat. Business confidence is at a 9-year high.
Mr. Speaker, he says he's not going to write the budget, but his Chancellor is on the front of the Daily Mirror talking about what she's going to do on taxes. So why can't he do the same in the chamber? Yes. But I asked him about pension contributions. The truth is he doesn't want to talk about pension contributions. It's all right for the Prime Minister. He has his own special law to stop his personal pension from being taxed. But let's be honest, Mr. Speaker, this is really about choices. My party knows that there is an alternative to tax rises. It's cutting spending, something that they are too scared or perhaps too weak to do. We offered to work with him to reform welfare and make meaningful savings. But his refusal sent a signal, and now the cost of borrowing is rising. The budget is in November, that is months away, and the markets may not wait. What will the Prime Minister be doing over the summer to get a grip on the cost of borrowing?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they left the most incredible mess in the economy, and now they think that they can lecture others. I think just last week, their chairman said that they've done the necessary apologising for after the 14 years of failure, they've done the necessary. I didn't hear an apology for the lowest living standards in living history. I didn't hear an apology for the £22 billion black hole. I didn't hear an apology for the Liz Truss mini budget. So maybe she should like to stand up and make that apology now.
Mr. Speaker, he's not doing... Yes. Mr. Speaker, he's not planning on doing anything this summer to fix the economy. The shadow of the last budget is hanging over the entire country. Just yesterday, only the Conservatives supported the two-child benefit cap because only the Conservatives believe in living within our means. Not Labour, not the Liberal Democrats, not Reform. But it's the end of term, Mr. Speaker, so why don't we go through his end of term scorecard? The economy is contracting. Inflation, highest in the G7. Unemployment, up every month under this government. Spending, out of control. Borrowing costs, more expensive than Greece. And this is just the first year, Mr. Speaker. The Labour Party should be ashamed of what it is doing to the country. Mr. Speaker, they can shake their heads as much as they like. The fact is, this summer, they're going to have to go to their constituents and explain why they've been making such a mess over the last 12 months. And isn't the case, Mr. Speaker, that the worst, given that this is just their first year, the worst is yet to come?
We're happily going to go to our constituents. We're going to tell them we promised 2 million extra NHS appointments and we delivered 4 million extra appointments. Mr. Speaker, I've got to upgrade that. It's now 4.5 million extra appointments. So we're going to tell our constituents that. Then we're going to tell them about the free school meals we're rolling about, the free breakfast clubs, the free childcare and school uniform costs. We'll tell them about that. And then when we've done that, we'll move on to affordable houses and tell them about the £39 billion we're investing. When we finish that, we'll tell them about the rail and road upgrades across the country, the £120 billion investment, and of course the 3 trade deals. And Mr. Speaker, we're only just getting started.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will never know exactly how much it meant to victims of the Troubles in Northern Ireland from right across society when he came, looked them in their eyes and promised them that no murderer would be immune from prosecution. Can he tell us when the last time he spoke to the Taoiseach about the shared approach to this issue was, and can he recommit today to those victims to ensure that no murderer will be seen as above the law?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is a really important issue. Can I begin by saying I have a profound respect and debt to our veterans who served. This is a complicated issue, and we've got to get this right. Veterans are at risk because of the false promises of the last government. Let's be clear. They made a false promise of immunity that does not exist. It was unlawful, it was struck down, and it was undeliverable. Their failed Legacy Act leaves veterans exposed with no settled process. We will create a secure, transparent system that protects veterans from unjustified persecution and gives victims, families and survivors the confidence that they need in the process.
Sir Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's words about the shocking Afghan data breach under the previous government kept secret for 3 years? And he will have our support if he decides to pursue a public inquiry. Mr. Speaker, I know the Prime Minister will agree that the shocking rise of anti-Semitism we have seen since Hamas's October the 7th terror attacks has no place in our society. British Jews should not have to live in fear of hatred, racism and abuse on our streets or online. A new report from the Board of Deputies Commission on Anti-Semitism, chaired by Lord Mann and Dame Penny Mordaunt, has set out 10 recommendations to tackle this appalling scourge. Will the Prime Minister study this report, and will his government respond to it in full?
Prime Minister.
Yes, we will, and we must fight anti-Semitism wherever we find it, as we must fight all hate offences, crimes and incidents wherever we find them.
Sir Ed David.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that reply? I hope we will see more action to tackle anti-Semitism. But turning to the Middle East now, Mr. Speaker, the world is looking on in horror at the scenes from Gaza. And now Netanyahu's ministers want to lock the whole population of Gaza into effectively a giant prison. A plan that would clearly amount to ethnic cleansing, as former Israeli Prime Minister Olmert has said. Does the Prime Minister agree that this is utterly abhorrent and unacceptable? And will he make clear to the Israeli government that the UK will not stand idly by and will act, starting by sanctioning Prime Minister Netanyahu himself?
Prime Minister.
Well, I am appalled by these suggestions in relation to Gaza, just as I'm appalled by the reports of yet more civilians being killed whilst trying to access aid. So on both fronts, I'm appalled by what we are seeing and what we're hearing. We raise it regularly, as he would expect. In relation to the civilians being killed, I would expect them to be fully and transparently investigated with full accountability for any failings. And Israel must clearly put in place measures that properly protect civilians in line with international law. And that is the case we're pressing repeatedly. But we do also want to see, and alongside that, an immediate ceasefire so that the remaining hostages can be brought out and aid at volume and at speed can be got in and a political process opened that, in my view, is the only way we're going to get a lasting solution.
Under Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, 4-year-old Eli Tester was killed in Rottenstall Cemetery when a memorial stone fell on him. All of Rosendale was shocked by this tragedy, so I hope the Prime Minister will join me in offering our deepest condolences to Eli's parents and family. And Mr. Speaker, families in Rosendale are also deeply concerned about reports that Reform-led Lancashire County Council are considering cuts to nursery funding. This would raise costs for working parents and might even force some nurseries to close. If this is an example of the sort of efficiencies that Reform are considering, then all of Lancashire, indeed all of us, should be worried. So would the Prime Minister join me in asking Lancashire County Council to think again?
Prime Minister.
Can I extend my deepest condolences to Eli's friends and family? And I do join him in urging the new Reform Council to think again and to change their mind on damaging cuts that hit children and young families. I have to say, my honourable friend is doing a much better job than his predecessor, the Conservative Party chairman under Liz Truss, who has now joined Reform, which proves once again, if you vote Tory, you get Reform, and if you vote Reform, you get the Tories. Whilst both of them are cutting services at home, we support families with free school meals, free breakfast clubs, and extending free childcare.
Sir Desmond Sway.
Jack Straw told us that the 98 Act places on us no expectation that we will remedy a declaration of incompatibility issued by a court. So the Prime Minister is wrong to say that the Legacy Act is struck down. But his own proposals, which open the door to compensation to Gerry Adams and place in jeopardy our own servicemen, present enormous difficulty to those of us who have served, increasingly on his own benches. Will he consider that?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the failed Legacy Act was struck down by the courts in Northern Ireland. And that leaves veterans exposed. What we're doing is creating a secure, transparent system that protects veterans from unjustified persecution, but also gives victims, families and survivors the confidence that they need in the process.
Paul Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Workers in Rochdale on the minimum wage received a much-needed pay rise this summer, thanks to this government. But honest businesses are being undermined by the menace of illegal working, particularly illegal working by illegal migrants from Iran and Iraq in bogus barber shops and fake vape shops. So will the Prime Minister agree with me that we need to speed up the rollout of digital ID, particularly to help our police and immigration staff crack down on this grey market that ruins our high streets and undercuts the workers' pay of British workers?
Well, my honourable friend is an excellent champion for Rochdale and a strong supporter, I know, of his local police and trading standards teams. Since we came to power, Mr Speaker, we've ramped up enforcement raids on illegal working. Arrests have gone up by 50% and we're tightening the law on delivery drivers. Digital IT will help us tackle illegal working, and we're rolling out the use of e-visas to have digital records of immigration status and checks to allow on-the-spot checks of anybody's right to work.
James McCleary.
Severe pregnancy sickness, hyperemesis gravidarum or HG, can mean vomiting more than 20 times a day. It causes physical discomfort, acute malnutrition and severe dehydration, which often leads to hospitalisation. It has profound and long-lasting mental health consequences. Recently, it was reported the woman took her own life after being denied access to the only licensed treatment, Zomvia. Tragically, her unborn child died too. The drug is licensed and available, yet women face a cruel postcode lottery to access it. Will the Prime Minister work urgently with the Department for Health to end this scandal so that every woman who needs Zomvia can get it wherever she lives? And will he meet with me and campaigners to look at this as a matter of urgency?
Prime Minister.
Well, thank him for raising this really important issue, and obviously incredibly sorry to hear about the tragic case that he mentions. As he will know, the availability of this drug is regulated across the NHS by NICE, who make decisions on which treatments provide the best care for patients whilst maintaining value for money with the taxpayer. But I will make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister to see what more can be done to get this treatment to patients who need it.
Levandu Mishra.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, in Stockport, approximately 20% of families live in social housing. After Stockport Liberal Democrat and Conservative councillors blocked the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework proposal in 2020, the need for social housing is even more critical. Far too many families are living in insecure, overcrowded accommodation, waiting years for a suitable family home. I welcome Labour's record-breaking £39 billion investment into social and affordable housing, and I want to make sure that communities like mine in Stockport are prioritised. So can I ask the Prime Minister to confirm that these homes will be built, they will be affordable, and will he look again at suspending the right to buy?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, we are delivering the biggest boost to social and affordable housing in a generation, and proud to do so. Our £39 billion investment will deliver around 300,000 sociable and affordable homes, with at least 60% of homes delivered for social rent. Mr Speaker, whilst we don't intend to remove the right to buy, which helps social tenants get on the property ladder, we're reforming the scheme to protect social housing stock and encourage councils to deliver more new homes.
Sir Julian Smith.
Mr Speaker, a much better understanding of the particular needs of autistic and neurodiverse children is vital to expand capacity in mainstream education for SEND pupils. Can I urge him, as he looks at this bill over the summer, the SEND bill, to introduce mandatory training for all teachers and all staff on autism and neurodiversity?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for that contribution, because parents and children have been failed far too often. We are committing an additional £1 billion into SEND, but there must be meaningful reform alongside it, and new teachers must have the appropriate training. So we're committed to reviewing, to working with parents and teachers, and we'll take away his suggestion. And I invite him and others across the House to work with us on this important reform, because I think this issue has been raised more than any other with me at Prime Minister's question. It's clearly a broken system. It needs reform. And if we can work together across the House to get it right, I think that is the least we owe to parents and children across the country. Thank you.
Blocker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I commend the Prime Minister for his work in tackling arbitrary detention of British citizens abroad and warmly welcome the creation of a special envoy. The Prime Minister will know of the anguish of the families of Jimmy Lai, Ryan Cornelius, Abdel Fattah, Jagtar Singh Johal and others. So can he tell us when he anticipates the appointment of the envoy, and will they have real powers like their counterparts in Canada and the United States to help bring our people home?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I start by thanking him for his work on the APBG, championing the plight of British nationals facing the most difficult circumstances overseas. We do routinely raise these cases with international counterparts, as he would expect, and we're deeply committed to getting them home and united with their loved ones. As part of strengthening support for British nationals overseas, we are working at pace to get the envoy role set up, and I'll make sure that he's kept updated in relation to that.
Blake Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Government plans for English devolution and NHS reform suggest that integrated care boards should align with new strategic authorities. The government's plan for Bedfordshire won't currently achieve this. So what assurances can the Prime Minister provide that local NHS reorganisation will be good value for money, improve local accountability and deliver the healthcare services needed to serve my constituents in rural mid-Bedfordshire, including the much-needed GP surgery in Wixhams?
Prime Minister.
The points to make about good value for money and accountability are really important. They're embedded in the work we're doing with the NHS at the moment, which is improving under our watch, not only the waiting lists, but in other respects. The 10-year plan for the NHS, which is intended to ensure that the NHS is fit for the future, has a number of principles, including principles of local accountability.
Brandish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the 11th of June, Alexander Dennis announced that it was planning to stop bus manufacturing in Scotland. My honourable friend from Falkirk and I have both met with the workers, the trade unions, the company and both UK and Scottish Government ministers to see how closure can be averted. Alexander Dennis needs commitment of orders for 2025 and 2026, and elected mayors are ideally placed to do this. Our industrial strategy is right when it says where things are made and by whom matters. So, can the Prime Minister assure Alexander Dennis and the workers that he believes bus manufacturing should have a future in Larbert and Falkirk?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to him for raising this, and I'm deeply concerned. It is a deeply concerning time for the workers and their families in Falkirk. I do agree, and we are working with mayors and local leaders to develop a pipeline of future orders for zero-emissions buses, and that's an important aspect here. And the Minister of Local Transport is hosting an urgent meeting of the bus manufacturing expert panel. Mr. Speaker, while Labour mayors in England are ordering Scottish buses, the SNP are ordering buses from China. Just like they ordered ships from Turkey and Poland, not Scottish shipyards. The SNP should be backing Scottish workers.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I begin by warmly congratulating the Prime Minister on his first year in office, acknowledge that the Labour manifesto was beautifully written, deeply moving, and like that other great blockbuster of hope and redemption, The Salt Path, a total pack of lies. With joblessness, inflation and debt ballooning, his personal ratings collapsing, and his backbenchers on a work to rule, could the Prime Minister recommend?
Come on, let's get on with the question.
Could the Prime Minister recommend a summer recess read in order to take all our minds away from the calamitous journey on which he and the Chancellor have embarked?
I think most of their backbenchers are already on their summer recess, looking at the benches opposite, Mr. Speaker. We are very proud of our manifesto. It was a very successful manifesto, giving a landslide victory, and now we're very proud to be implementing it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let us be clear in this House. Israel is starving Palestinian children. That is a war crime. Israel is killing Palestinian children as they queue for food. That is a war crime. Our government quite rightly imposes thousands of sanctions on Russia for its war crimes in Ukraine. How many more horrors must we witness before the Prime Minister acts with the same scale of sanctions against Israel to stop this genocide? Don't Palestinian lives matter?
Hear, hear. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, I'm appalled by reports of more civilians being killed in Gaza, particularly when they are trying to access aid, and each of those incidents does need to be fully and transparently investigated, with accountability for any failing. That, of course, has to be alongside the ceasefire that is desperately needed, and we're working hard with others to achieve, to release all of the hostages that remain, but also to protect civilians and get much more aid at speed and volume into Gaza.
Lincoln John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can see why you call these sessions Prime Minister's questions and not Prime Minister's answers.
If he carries on, there will be no more. Come on, Lincoln John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following the magnificent success of the England cricket team earlier on this week, and the triumphal return of Mr. Jofra Archer, would the Prime Minister agree that what he needs to get from his ministers over the next 12 months is more pace and less spin?
Prime Minister. My ministers have delivered on the NHS, on the economy, on rail, etc. He needs a break.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Successive Conservative governments failed to invest in the North East's transport infrastructure. Whilst the Labour government is already changing that with the £1.8 billion recently secured for the region, upgrading Moor Farm and Seaton Burn roundabouts can build on that, unlocking growth, and it's supported by local people and businesses. Does the Prime Minister share my disappointment that rather than support my campaign for upgrades, the Conservative leadership in Northumberland County Council are actively undermining my lobbying efforts to deliver this game changer for the North East?
Prime Minister. She's doing a superb job for Northumberland, and I'm happy to set out what we've delivered. Over £400 million of funding for Northumberland County Council this year. That's a 5.8% increase this year, Mr. Speaker, an 80% increase in the number of homes starting construction in her area, a near £30 million increase in funding for Northumbria Police, and 14 free breakfast clubs in Northumberland, supporting over 3,000 children. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During my meetings with guests on the Homes for Ukraine scheme in my Newton Abbot constituency, they are telling me that they are worried about their visas running out, even with the 18-month extension. They see reports of Ukrainians being refused asylum in the UK since it's said to be safe to return to Ukraine, even while Putin's missiles explode in Ukraine cities in record numbers. Some of their children are working through 2- or 3-year education courses and are frightened of having to leave. Will the Prime Minister meet with them and myself to hear their plight and offer them some hope in this uncertain and dangerous world?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and we're proud to have offered or extended sanctuary to over 300,000 Ukrainians and their families throughout the visa scheme since the invasion in 2022. We do need to provide certainty and security for Ukrainians in the United Kingdom, and we will provide an additional 18 months permission to remain in the UK and continued rights to live, work and study here as well.
James Frith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2017, I led a select committee inquiry that warned of an emerging disaster in SEND. Those warnings went unheeded by the Conservatives, who left behind a broken system, which even they have admitted since is lose, lose, lose. Can the Prime Minister confirm that this Labour government's rebuilt SEND system will be shaped by listening to the needs of SEN families, never again ignored, but served in the best traditions of a Labour government?
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right, and I think there's general agreement across the House that the system is broken, just like almost everything they touched, which was broken at the end of 14 miserable years. It doesn't work for parents, and it lets down children, and we will reform it. We're already investing an additional £1 billion, but we do need a system that truly supports every child. We're developing proposals, and I want to work across the House in order to get the right outcome.
Final question, Pippa Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yet again, we're suffering record-breaking heat waves and drought, which are worrying people in my constituency of South Cambridgeshire, which are both the fastest growing and the most water-stressed area in the country. The proposed Fens Reservoir is important, but will only provide water for the already ambitious house-building plans, not the thousands of new homes that the government proposes. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the water crisis in Greater Cambridge is a deal-breaker for the government's growth plans, and will he help me urgently convene a ministerial roundtable with the Cambridge Water Scarcity Group?
She's right to draw attention to the drought and the question more generally of reservoirs. It is shocking that a new reservoir hasn't been built for a very, very long time, not at all in the previous 14 years. We are rebuilding now, and we're doing that alongside the infrastructure and housing that we also need to build, and we'll work across the House on that.
We'll let the front benches change over.
Well, there we go. That was the Prime Minister at the final PMQs of the summer recess. Just a reminder that he said at the very top of Prime Minister's question time that ex-ministers in the previous Conservative government have got serious questions to answer about that Afghanistan data breach, which of course resulted in the secret relocation scheme and legal cover-up. So the Prime Minister is suggesting that previous Conservative ministers do have questions to answer. We'll be talking about that with Sam Coates and indeed our panel of MPs in a moment. But first, we want to take you to the Court of Appeal, where a judge is considering a tougher sentence for the triple murderer, Nicholas Prosper. You may remember.
Right, we now come to the urgent question. Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I ask the Minister if she will make a statement on Britain's response to the worsening situation in Sudan?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sudan is the worst humanitarian crisis on record. Over 30 million people need aid and 12 million people have been displaced. Famine is spreading fast, and new reports confirm that the situation will deteriorate in the next 3 months. Cholera is also now widespread. Life-saving assistance continues to be blocked by the parties. Last month, an appalling attack on a UN convoy delivering life-saving aid to those fleeing violence in El Fasher killed 5 aid workers. The deliberate targeting of aid workers clearly violates international law, and as the United Nations Security Council penholder on Sudan, the UK led calls for accountability for such attacks, including through the UK-penned press statement on the 12th of June. Last week, the Security Council, the International Criminal Court of the Prosecutor, found reasonable grounds to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity may well have been committed and continue to be committed in Darfur. The perpetrators must be held to account. The UK continues to play a leading role in ensuring that aid gets to where it's most needed. In April, the Foreign Secretary brought together a broad coalition of partners to build consensus on strengthening humanitarian access. The co-chair's statement calling on the parties to facilitate humanitarian access in accordance with their commitments in the Jeddah Declaration. Over £810 million in funding for Sudan was announced, including £120 million of UK aid, supporting over 650,000 people this year. In the absence of a ceasefire, Mr. Speaker, the humanitarian situation will only worsen. We continue to call on the warring partners to place the interests of the Sudanese people over their pursuit of a military victory. The UK is working with our international partners to push the warring partners to return to the negotiating table and commit to a meaningful, sustainable ceasefire. Any process which follows must be inclusive. We underline the importance of a return to a civilian rule that's democratically elected and representative of the whole country. Moves by the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces to establish their own parallel governments will only exacerbate de facto splits and could lead to permanent partition of Sudan, and this is in no one's interests. Mr. Speaker, we have and we will continue to use all diplomatic tools at our disposal to protect civilians, get aid to those who need it most, and support a Sudanese-led peace process with civilians at its heart.
Sir Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for granting this urgent question today. I make no apologies for raising the dire and desperate straits of the Sudanese people again in this House, not least because it is Britain which leads on the Sudanese situation in the United Nations on behalf of all other nations. The people of Sudan are in the throes.
Let's return back to PMQs, and we're going to speak to our panel in a second, but first let's get the thoughts of Sam Coates, who's in the studio. Sam, a little flat, I thought, in the end, PMQs this week, given it's the last one before the summer recess. But Afghanistan featured, and the cost of living economy did too.
Yeah, it was all a bit dreary. I was a bit disappointed. It's your first time in Millbank doing in Westminster doing this, Darren. They didn't put on a show for you.
Yes, it was a little flat.
My goodness. I mean, basically, what you want out of the final PMQs of the season is something a little bit more jolly, something that sends everybody
a morale
going.
boost.
Yeah, for us as much as everybody else. And I know that no side, none of our big beast parties have had the easiest of times. But my goodness, it felt like they were all going through the motion. We got Keir Starmer's list of achievements, such as they are. In the first year of government, we had Kemi Badenoch sort of just rehearsing the news of the last 24 hours, really, in the last few days, and familiar themes from her as well. Look, the most important thing I think in the last 24 hours that's going on is the inquiry into is the aftermath of what's going on with Afghanistan. The leak that was revealed yesterday at midday, when it turned out that for over 2 years, the British government had imposed a super injunction preventing anybody talking about this, either the data breach done by what we believe is a British Special Forces soldier revealing the details of up to 100,000 Afghans and their families who'd helped Britain, making them potentially targets of the Taliban, but also details of this up to £7 billion resettlement scheme that we were kept from knowing any details about.
Which is a lot of money. I mean, we've been arguing, and politicians have been arguing about welfare spending.
Which is less than that.
Way less than that.
And what's interesting, and what struck me, and really the only thing that struck me from Prime Minister's questions, to be honest, was that the Prime Minister is seeking to make this into a party political issue. And I thought that was brave, bluntly, because Keir Starmer's government has sat on this for a year. And the whole episode has lasted 2.5 years. So a large chunk of the period in which the super injunction has been in place has been when Keir Starmer's been sitting in
But
Downing
John
Street.
Healey's argument, I think, is that he has made efforts and attempts to effectively lift this super injunction.
Are you honestly telling me it takes a
I'm only asking the question, Sam.
I'm asking a rhetorical question. Are we really saying it takes a whole year to come to the conclusion that that there wasn't? Because let me just explain what happened yesterday. The government basically said you can lift the super injunction because they did a risk assessment saying, well, do you know what? The Taliban probably do already have this list, or the risk of reprisal is low. That was the argument being advanced in the secret court for months. You know, I think if you took part in those proceedings, you say, no, there's nothing new about yesterday. The situation yesterday has been the same situation for absolutely ages. What successive governments did, and I think there is culpability from the Tories, I just happen to think there's culpability from Labour as well, is that there was an initial period where there was quite possibly a threat to life for Afghan individuals to help Britain at the hands of the Taliban. But that threat kind of dissipated. It went away. But then we were coming close to an election. And I think that Rishi Sunak's government did not want the prospect of a £7 billion, tens of thousands of Afghan refugee sort of scandal bubbling up. And then Labour came in and it just went in the too difficult to handle box for months and months as they had a lot to get to grips with. So there are, you know, I think there is possibly blame on both sides. Whether what we know, we're going to find out anything or more about it, I'm not sure. I have one question that which we didn't find out the answer to today, and that is this. Are there any more super injunctions? The judge thought that it was unprecedented to use a super injunction in government policy. I'd really like to know whether that's true. Of
Well,
course, we can't actually.
The problem with
be
super
told.
injunctions is you don't know.
I mean, I always want things I can't have.
Yeah.
You know that.
OK, let's bring in our panel. Delighted to say we've got Sarah Smith from Labour, we've got Andrew Bowie from the Conservative Party and Pete Wishart from the SNP. Very good afternoon to you all. Sarah, let's start with you. Did you get a sense the Prime Minister's trying to heap the blame when it comes to this Afghan data breach on the previous administration?
I think what's really important in this is that we remember the very brave men and women that fought alongside our incredibly brave soldiers in that conflict, and to whom we did owe a duty to offer them resettlement here in order to keep them safe from the threats that they faced from the Taliban, and the decisions that were taken. From Ben Wallace, who was at the time responsible, and since, have been focused, I do believe, from both sides in terms of trying to do what's right for those individuals. And this has important context because in a future conflict, why would people come forward to fight alongside, should it be needed, if we don't reassure them that those safety nets are in place? This government has brought in much more stringent processes and systems to make sure or decrease the risk of this happening. Because we have to be clear, the MOD did this several times. This is not just a one-off, and there do have to be serious questions to be answered around that. And and it is important that there is the right investigation done. However, in the end, I think let's keep focused on what's important here, and that's these people, these men and these women, and doing what's right by them.
It is, but there is enormous potential cost to all of this. I mean, £7 billion, it may not be that figure, but if it is, that is a lot of money. Andrew, do you think it was the right decision, this super injunction?
I think it was, absolutely. And Ben
because,
Wallace
Johnny Mercer's talked about being the most hapless display of incompetence by successive ministers and officials that he saw in his time of government.
Yeah, look, I mean, the first I knew of the super injunction, like everybody else, was yesterday. I think the super injunction was put in place for the right reasons. Ben Wallace explained that this morning. It was to protect the lives of these individuals, these very brave individuals who, in our time in Afghanistan, stepped up to work with and support British and Allied troops over there. And month after month, under successive governments, that super injunction was reapplied for and indeed maintained. So I think it was right to protect those individuals. The cost is huge, and there should be an investigation into how this incredible mistake was made. And, frankly, heads should roll as a result.
Andrew, can I just ask you, there's actually quite a lot of consensus, I think, about the need for secrecy at the start of this process. Yep. Where there is disagreement is that you actually needed 2.5 years of super injunction. I mean, those accounts from inside the super injunction secret court suggest that government lawyers were just sort of using any excuse in the book. They were not able to schedule meetings. They were trying to say that barristers weren't available. Are you sure, for instance, that there should have been a super injunction after the general election? Is there a point at which actually we say, look, the secrecy is going on, it's for political expediency rather than anything else?
Well, all of these things...
You seem quite sure a moment ago.
Well, I mean, all of these things will be looked into by the various investigations, which I'm sure will take place, including by the Defence Select Committee. But the Minister of Defence, indeed Minister's view at the time, and officials' view at the time, was that a super injunction was still required in order to protect those individuals.
These are officials and ministers potentially culpable of something that is extraordinarily politically embarrassing. So maybe, just maybe, they were in favour of the secrecy because they didn't want to have the eggs splattered over their faces.
I mean, that's speculation. I won't get drawn on that. The super injunction was put in place initially to protect the lives of those individuals who were affected by the leak.
I mean, I think there's absolutely no doubt it was the right thing to do at the initial stages of this, and I think it was right to protect the individuals concerned. But what's not right, I think, is a continuation for 2.5 years of the super injunction. And I think Sam's assessment of the timeline of all this is spot on. This was politically embarrassing for the last government, and they were going to do everything possible to ensure that that was not going to be revealed in advance of the general election. Now, the new government, when they took office, could have done this, got this out of the way, made sure it was dealt with properly. And for a number of reasons, probably being a new government, they decided not to. And I think what happened was a sort of malaise set in, and why bother addressing this if it could be left alone? So I think it's one of these really unsavoury, calamitous issues and decisions that's been taken. But we're now where we are, and I think that we will have to have thorough investigations to why this actually happened and uncover exactly why this was allowed to take place.
OK, we're just going to pause there for a moment, because you may remember a little earlier we were looking at the Court of Appeal in regards to Nicholas Prosper. You may remember, who was jailed for a lifetime of 49 years back in 2023 for the murders of his mother and 2 siblings in Luton. Well, we've just heard the decision from the Court of Appeal that he will not be given a whole life sentence after there was a concern about that sentence being unduly lenient. They wanted to increase that to a whole life sentence, i.e. that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. Well, as I say, the Court of Appeal has decided that he will not get that whole life order, and that minimum term of 49 years will remain in place. And we'll be live at the Court of Appeal with reaction to this story from 1 o'clock onwards. OK, let's return to PMQs. Sam, the other big issue today was, of course, the economy, if you like. It's what Kemi Badenoch kind of lent into. And, you know, in many regards, it's a bit of an open goal because, let's be honest about this, the public finances, difficult decisions ahead for the budget. You know, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are on a sticky wicket, if you like, on this.
Yeah, and the reason it's an open goal is because Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have at least £6 billion, we think probably upwards of £20 billion to find in November when it comes to the next budget, when Rachel Reeves is next assessed against her own fiscal rules. There's a black hole partly because of various failures to get through government policy, partly because the economy is doing less well. And we think it's all going to come from tax because she says she's sticking to her fiscal rules. And it is quite hard to cut spending when you've just done a spending review and you can't get welfare changes through the Commons. So that's the backdrop. My goodness, everybody looks so glum though. Rachel Reeves.
Well, I mean,
look, I don't.
I think you just summed up why.
Yes, but I mean, if one of the jobs of government is to inject a little bit of zest and optimism in it, if you looked at Lucy Powell, Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves, it was, why the long faces? If you've got a plan, if you're so certain of best foot forward. Last night was Rachel Reeves' Mansion House speech. She was saying we need to deregulate in favour of growth. I mean, I've heard that before. I've heard that once or twice. In fact, I've heard that at every single Mansion House speech I think I've ever covered for 20 years. So, I mean, what is the plan to get out of this? I think the truth is the government's just sort of limbering up to recess. There'll be a reset plan drawn up over the summer holidays. And we'll come back in September, and hopefully those three plus everybody else will have a smile on their face.
Well, we'll see. Sarah, have you got a smile on your face going into the... There we go, we go.
I do, and I think there was some good, I have to say, from the opposite benches, the Tories dropped in a few jokes, I think, at the end of the session today, didn't they? I am very much looking forward to less time in London, a lot more time in Accrington, and then actually getting even further north up to Scotland for a little bit of a break. And, you know, I mean, there's a lot of serious issues on the agenda, as ever, today. But, you know, today the news and the inflation changes were being forecast at a higher level, actually, before today's announcement. We've got wages up, we've got interest rates coming down and likely to come down further. We know this is transpiring into people having lower things to pay on their mortgage and keeps us focused on what we're trying to do, which is
but we also clearly
have
tax increases,
and we've been very, you know, the commitment remains absolute in terms of protecting working people's pay packets and, you know, making sure that any changes are fair. You know, I don't think anyone envies the Chancellor her job and what she's trying to do here, which is navigate the huge investment that we need in our public services to get them working again, because you don't get people back into work if they can't get an appointment on the NHS. We've absolutely smashed the objectives around appointments. Waiting lists are coming down.
No, we're not having that. The NHS appointments, the rate of growth in NHS appointments is slower under this government than it was under Rishi Sunak. How do you respond to that?
We are still far overachieving on what we set out. We're far overachieving.
It's a smaller rise in the rate of appointments than there was under Rishi Sunak. So it is just flat not true to say you're doing better than the last government when it comes to the NHS.
We absolutely are, because I think if you look across the board at the NHS...
How can you say it's
on the NHS, if you look at what we inherited and where we are now, tackling the strikes that were causing huge disruption, people are starting to get operations that have been waiting in pain for so long. People are getting the appointments that they need. We're also providing extra support around mental health.
Actually on the same page. You are not claiming that the rate of growth of NHS appointments is faster now than it was originally.
But I am absolutely being
so you're
exact.
you're agreeing with me about the facts.
We are overachieving on our own targets to achieve the 2 million new appointments. That is where we've overachieved on what we set out.
But slower than the last government.
Andrew, just on the economy again, the problem is for the Conservative Party is that there are ways and means, of course, to attack the government, and it's fair to say the economy is not in a great state. But my word, it rings hollow when it's from the Conservative Party, doesn't it? Well, I mean, you talk about taxation. Taxation was at the highest it was going into the election.
It's now getting higher.
No, but the public debt. All of this, not all of it, but a large part of the problems we're in have been around for a very long time. Productivity, economic growth.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you know, we've acknowledged that, and we've apologised for some of the decisions that were taken in the latter years of our time in government. But you know, through the period before that, employment was up, the economy was growing, and what we've seen since the election is growth halved, unemployment.
The economy's really not growing for the last 15, 20 years.
And inflation up.
New jobs
the growth has been halved by the OBR. The forecast is now for a halving of where they expected the economy to be just this time 1 year ago. And we did leave this country with the fastest growing economy in the G7, despite the huge travails that we had as a country, not least the war in Ukraine, the energy price shock and the global pandemic that we were recovering from. So there are incredibly difficult decisions coming for the Chancellor to make, and that will affect every single person and indeed business in this country come the budget.
Pete?
Well, it's no wonder I think both of my colleagues sitting next to me just cannot wait for recess to come. This has been a dreadful last few weeks of this parliamentary term. And today ended, of course, with inflation figures reaching another high as we start to go into the recess. And I think there was such a lack of energy from Kemi Badenoch when it came to issues around the economy. I was sort of glad that she picked up on this, and I really thought she was going to be quite forceful, because Brexit Britain's effectively broken. If we look at everything from rising energy prices to cost of living crisis, if we're looking at all, if we just look at any indices, the lack of economic growth.
Is it much better after almost 20 years of SNP power?
Part of the United Kingdom. At a greater rate.
There's a couple of things this government could be doing and looking at, like Germany, for example, has abandoned its fiscal rules in order to try and inject some energy into its economy. If this government followed the Scottish government's taxation regime, they would be saving £16 billion more for the
Well, I'm glad to see this discussion has been more lively than PMQs.
If we actually indeed join the European Union.
We're going to have to stop. I'm really sorry. Have the best summer. Have a good break. And we'll be back, of course, in September. Sarah, Andrew, Pete, thank you very much indeed. Now let's bring you up to date with the weather, which actually might also bring a smile to our faces.